Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, where we will be doing a deep dive into how the Autodesk Revit integration from One Click LCA can streamline your LCA process. We are joined by some guest speakers today. We have Becky with the Autodesk Sustainability Tech Partnership Program, Kostas, who is a One Click LCA expert, and Sophie Martin with Page, who is an active One Click LCA user. In addition to our guest presenters, we have a whole production team behind the scenes. If you are joining us and you have a question during the demonstration, go ahead and just drop your question right in the chat. Our production team is there in the chat with you, and they will be answering any questions you have. If you want to know more, if you have any comments, go ahead and engage with us in the chat. We will be in there ready to talk to you. And before we get started, go ahead in the chat right now and let us know where you are dialing in from. We love to see where our audience is. Before we get started, just a few little housekeeping notes of what to expect. First, we will start with Becky with Autodesk. As I said, she's part of the Sustainability Tech Partnership Program, and she will be talking about why sustainability is important to Autodesk, the ecosystem that they're building to fill the needs in sustainability in the construction industry, and why they've partnered with One Click LCA. Then we'll hand it over to Kostas, who will give us a high-level overview of the One Click LCA integration with Autodesk's Revit tool. And we'll close by hearing from Sophie Martin, who, as I said, is an active One Click LCA user, and she will show you tips and tricks and best practices that she has found in using the tool. She'll also highlight some of the challenges she's overcome and reasons why doing an LCA is really the best way to measure the sustainability of your project. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I will hand the stage over to Becky.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Becky, and I work on the impact team at Autodesk. I'm responsible for leading the Sustainability Tech Partner Program, which I'll talk about shortly. Before I dive in, let's talk a little about why we're here today. Maybe you're responsible for helping your company meet their ESG goals, or perhaps you've been thinking about how to consider sustainability in your own projects. What we know is that the more data and intelligence we can get into the hands of Autodesk customers, and the sooner in the design process we can make that possible, the more opportunity for impact we can create. In fact, 84% of Autodesk customers say they prioritize climate action as a top UN sustainability goal. And that's encouraging news because 60% of global CO2 emissions are associated with the AEC and manufacturing industries. Due to this demand, the sustainability space is growing rapidly, and Autodesk is committed to helping our customers solve these issues. Over the next few slides I show, you will learn some of the things Autodesk is doing to address this opportunity. I'll talk about the ecosystem we're building through partnerships, its priorities, and then I'll also give a brief overview of One Click LCA's integration to Revit. By the end, you will know what ecosystem gaps exist for sustainability, and you'll understand how One Click LCA and Autodesk are working together. It's no secret that climate change is having real impacts on our communities. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, in 2023, there were 28 climate disaster events in the United States with damage exceeding $1 billion each. We know these types of events are becoming more frequent and more severe. Everyone everywhere is or will be impacted. It's clear there's a strong sense of urgency to address this climate crisis, and one way Autodesk is accelerating impact with our customers is through partnering with sustainability experts to build services on our platform. But what are the objectives for Autodesk's partner program for sustainability? Well, we're building an ecosystem for sustainability services and data integrations in order to plug gaps in our workflow with the ultimate goal of getting more sustainability data and intelligence into the hands of our customers. Let's talk about the priorities or gaps we see in the ecosystem related to sustainability. Our team has identified 9 gaps that we're working to address through the partner program, and as you will see, there are some differences between AEC and manufacturing. All of the gaps listed here are about getting dimensions of lifecycle assessment data as they relate to the products and assets our customers build. Now, I'll walk through each of these in a little more detail. Starting with AEC, the first 2.5 of these relate to what we call total carbon. So global energy grid data is about understanding how clean or dirty the energy supplying a building is. Asset level carbon data is about the energy consumed during the operation of that building, and so you can understand how efficient it is. And lastly, material carbon data relates to the embodied carbon of the materials used to construct that building. Material health data, on the other hand, is about the toxicity of materials. So how harmful is it to people or the environment? The next one for AEC is called material passports, which is about tracking an asset, like the doors in a building, for example, over its lifetime. If we can accurately track the components of a building, we open up the possibility to reuse or recycle them once their original purpose has been fulfilled. And the last one for AEC is related to climate and weather data. Right now, we have good historical data. However, there is a real opportunity to achieve impact if we can provide access to predictive climate data. Imagine the architect designing a site had access to accurate climate models. They would know that the building they're designing will be resilient against extreme weather events. Moving on to manufacturing, we do see some similar themes. The first one is about energy consumed during the use phase of a product. And the example I like to give here is a vehicle. Over its lifetime, a car or truck will emit significantly more CO2 than during the manufacturing of it. The more we can understand the lifetime carbon impact of a product during the design phase, the more informed decisions that we will be able to enable. Recyclability and circularity is a particularly complex area to address, and this is due to limited data and research. However, we are starting to see some advancements over the last few years. For instance, research is progressing in the field of remanufacturing. The next one is called supply chain impact data, which is also known as Scope 3 carbon emissions, and that relates to the carbon impact of things like purchased components, logistics, or waste. Think of the tires on a car. Right now, we have decent data for the raw materials and for the manufacturing process, but we're missing parts related to distribution. Where did those tires come from? How were they shipped? How far will they travel to the assembly plant? The more complete data we can get, the better sustainability outcomes we can help our customers achieve. And lastly, factory carbon tracking is about getting the best possible data during the manufacturing process. The more customers can track and monitor machines, the better equipped they are to make informed decisions. A really good example here comes from Toyota. They were able to isolate one paint booth as being responsible for 60% of the energy consumed of their facility. And now I want to give a brief overview of how OneClick LCA and Autodesk are working together to address some of these opportunities. But first, let's talk about why you might integrate BIM and LCA. Well, doing so enables accurate and comprehensive building LCAs quickly using BIM models. This allows for simulation of various design scenarios that make it easy to compare environmental impacts of design choices. The One-Click LCA integration to Revit works by extracting relevant data from Revit models. This speeds up data input for the building material queries in One-Click LCA, which enables quick analysis of material choices for sustainability during the design process. And here's an overview of how this process works. I won't go through this in detail, but there are 3 options for integrating LCA into Revit: LCA in the cloud, LCA in Revit, and Revit to Excel. It's clear that there is a significant opportunity when it comes to sustainability, but we need to move fast to keep up to speed with the industry demand. In order to achieve this, Autodesk needs to continue investing and paving a way for our partners to help us extend and support our sustainability platform. And if you're interested in learning more about the Sustainability Tech Partner Program here at Autodesk, please check out our website or feel free to reach out to me directly.
Thank you for that great overview, Becky. We know that filling those gaps in sustainability is so important, and it's fantastic to have a partner like Autodesk in driving that mission forward. Next, we'll hear from One-Click LCA expert Kostas, who will give us an overview of the One-Click LCA Revit integration. And as we go through the presentation, like I said before, if you have questions, if you have comments, drop them in the chat. We're in there with you, and we will be answering your questions as they come up. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kostas.
All right. Hello to everyone from me as well. Thank you very much, Eileen, for that introduction. So before we get started with the Revit integration demo, I can mention some general things. So first, I would like to mention that we support all the recent Revit versions, and we're actively working on supporting also Revit 25. Also, in order to access the plugin and use it, you can download it from Autodesk App Store, and then you need to run the installer and restart Revit. And then it should appear inside Revit as a tab. So now I will start sharing my screen. Now you should be able to see it. So yeah, I can mention that overall there are two main workflows here. So one can either just export a bill of materials, like just like export everything or improve it before exporting it. And then one can also do an LCA directly inside Revit using our plugin. And well, one can also do both at the same time, depending the level of detail they want to go with the assessment or what they want to do and what results they want to take out of OneClick LCA. So I will explain everything in more detail. Here, considering though the time constraints, maybe we will not review like all the smaller details of the platform and of the tool, and I won't be able to cover all the cases. So for that, please feel free to check our relevant article in OneClick LCA Academy, and we also have an article in our customer support center on the Revit integration, so you can check them as well. Or reach out to our customer support and to our customer support for any questions. So now for the two workflows that I mentioned, so I will start with the part where one wants to export the bill of materials. So the way to do this is, well, there is a shortcut where you instantly start with LCA in Cloud, and this will directly export the bill of materials with the default settings, nothing else to do. You export the bill of materials, you use it on your own, or you pass it to a colleague. Of course, both of these workflows require the user that uses the data to have an appropriate license. Details of this can be found in the same articles in the customer support center. And then to export the bill of materials, well, apart from the quick solution, there is also like a more, let's say, sophisticated one, where one can actually try to already do some of the work already inside the plugin, and then make the import process a bit more efficient and faster. And what one can do is that if they wish, they can open the plugin and start already here filtering what building parts they want to include in the export. Like, on a high level or go in more detail, select the families and the Revit categories and the types they want to export. And also, if they wish, they can also customize some parameters that are exported for different Revit elements, and one can also start assigning environmental profiles directly inside Revit. This has its benefits, being side by side, seeing the model and seeing the mappings in the same screen, being able to edit the model and so on. Here we typically recommend users to like open the plugin and see what they export before running the export. It can have some benefits, like to make the import process more efficient. This can be quite handy, especially, well, if you're also not familiar with the model, it might be helpful to take a look here and see what is what and what we are exporting. And also, like it might help you in few ways in the next step. So we recommend to open here the plugin and get a better understanding, maybe filter out irrelevant data and so on. But it is optional. And then for the second workflow with the calculation, you have the same first step. So you open the plugin, you filter what you want to include in the assessment. And then the difference is you make a request to get results, and then you get the calculations, and then you can do as many iterations as you wish. So I will demo the plugin for now, having these workflows in mind. So in order to first filter what you wish to be included in the export or in the calculation, you first can select here in very high level, which if you want to exclude the MEP or the external areas. And then you can go into more detail, select which linked models you wish to export, phases, options. You also have the option to select a material, like an object in Revit, and then just export the selected element or the active view. These two work only for the main model, not for the linked ones. And then you can also go to more detail, say all the Revit categories, like per Revit document, and come here and select what you wish to export. So for now, I will select all, and then let's say I want to use all of them. Now I will extend the plugin. Here, as a note, the plugin can be moved also to a separate screen, so it is dockable. Like you can also pin it somewhere in the screen, and then move it to a second screen. Now for demo purposes, since I'm sharing one screen, I keep it here. I will adjust it so that the names are clearer. So here you can select the Revit category inside, well, let's say inside this linked model, and then see what families and types are included. For its category or for its type, you can select also in what units you wish to handle it, what unit we should export from that type. Like we have customized our default settings so that we try to by default optimize the whole workflow and make it easier for the user. But of course, if one wants, they can further adjust it as they say best. But you can assess what is the way of getting the most accurate quantity if you have some doubt and so on, or if you see if you have some preference, or if you have created some private construction that has a specific unit. Also, talking about constructions, at this stage, I would like to highlight one very specific feature that I consider that it is very, very useful. So what is a very common problem in BIM models and trying to make an LCA out of them is, well, the very common challenge is to get an accurate bill of materials. As in order to do an LCA, I mean, you need to have the correct quantities and multiply them with the correct impact factor. So getting the quantities right is quite critical. So here there can be a common challenge that the Revit or the BIM models in general might be lacking detail. So the material layers might not be there, might be inaccurate, might be partially in place. And they might not be enough level of detail to do this correctly, or you don't trust them. So in that case, what we offer to you is an option to select if you wish to export the different objects as whole objects or breaking them down to materials. So breaking the object down to materials, of course, it can be more accurate because you get all the layers. But when you're in the early stages where you can maximize carbon cuts, you don't have this luxury. So you can keep, in such cases, the objects grouped either on building level from the settings, or here by selecting that, for example, this floor slab, I don't want to split it to materials. And then let's say, or these columns, I want to keep them all grouped, or I want to group some of them. Yeah, I believe this can come quite handy. And then once you export an object as a whole object, like you export X square meters of external wall, then you can look for wall constructions, which are ready-made assemblies that we have prepared, or that you can also have your private library with such constructions, and map these composite solutions to this Revit objects. And in some cases, there can be also EPDs from manufacturers that refer to more composite systems for specific material categories and solutions. Yeah, so keep that in mind. Now for demo purposes, I will, to make the UI simpler, I will select only a few walls. Let's say we can go to the walls. And I will include, let's say I will select all and unselect them. And then let's pick the brick wall, and let's pick one of these exterior walls. And then I will go to the materials. Here, there is a range of features. I will mention that some of the most useful ones are find element from 3D and isolate in 3D. So this allows you to isolate materials in the 3D model, or the opposite way around. Here there is a limitation if the material doesn't belong to the 3D model. So here I will get a warning if it is not there. Oh no, it was there. So, I can see what is this material, and then I can, check it, see if this is what I was looking for, and edit the materials and see if this is what I had. Here I had already done some mapping, so I can see that this blaster board is, if it is correctly mapped to this material here. And the opposite way around, select a material and it will be highlighted here. So here, theoretically, one can already export the data. If you have done assign any mappings, like environmental profiles, I refer to like when I mention mappings, I refer to environmental profiles. You can assign them and export them as well. Or if you go to results, you will get results. Here, you don't need to assign mappings manually. If you have an appropriate expert license that returns results back to you, it also returns mapping suggestions, which you can then come here and remove or copy and get. You can use as basis to further improve the whole mapping process. Also a couple of comments you can see here, some suggestions for the naming. So the more accurate the material name is, the better. If the material name is identical to OneClick LCA data points, even better, because everything works automatically. But then you might have challenges like this, where you have a data point named like default wall, and then the user is not able to easily to identify what this should be mapped to. So then maybe you can keep this type grouped and assign it to a brick wall construction. Here at the top, you can find all OneClick LCA data. You can see database material and unit filters. I won't go into the details, and then get the results. Once you get the results, you can click here, refresh results. You also get a graph here, so we can see that the impacts are mostly coming at this stage from the metal studs. And then you can also use the Carbon Hero benchmarks as in the cloud. One mention that to log in, you also need to use a different password as of now, not your regular password, but a different password that is called API password that you can take from your user account. And once you are done, you can, if you wish, you can save the settings. So all this filtering, unit choices, mapping assignments can be saved locally in a file, and then share this file with another colleague and reuse it. Yeah, so reuse it in the future for the same model. And then once you are done, you can also export to the cloud. This process is always the same, so I won't go to its details. Here, you import the data, we filter based on the tool. So if you go for lit, we will filter out whatever is not structure and envelope, except if you adjust this. And then you can go combine the imported data so that this is a bit faster and with rules that are described here. And then we will give you some feedback on potential mistakes. Environmental profile assignment, I can jump there, create a new design. Here in the mapping assignment, you can see on the one side imported materials, and on the right side, you can see the assigned environmental profiles and who mapped these materials. So this came from the model, while this came from other users globally. And these two, I need to, they didn't get any mapping, so I need to do this manually. And these ones, you can review them as well, see their data cards and so on. For now, due to lack of time, I will just go straight to the results. So here, the import process takes me directly to the results. The results are customized for the tool I selected here in the settings step. Once I come here, I get a warning that not all the data are imported from Revit, so I might need to fill in some additional data manually. And then you get the results, and you can also export the reports or use further, decide how you manage this data and go back and review your inputs, go into more detail and so on. One last thing, I guess the online interface can be more handy if you wish to do like this type of detailed reporting, do an assessment for certification and get a report out of it, or this more detailed insights on all the different LCA stages. But if you wish to get a quick carbon assessment and just a figure or compare some data, like using the plugin can be more than enough for that type of purpose. And then it has a more simplified interface with less questions and less information. So it might be easier to handle for people who get started with LCA. And actually, this is it from me. Went a bit fast. I hope this was useful. If you want more info, check our customer support center in OneClick LCA Academy. And I will stop here. Thank you very much for your time. Next, we'll hear from one of our customers, Sophie Martin, for some more in-depth best practices. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophie Martin. I'm on the building science team at Page. Page is a full-service design firm, architecture, engineering. We do it all. My role in the building science team, we're really focused on sustainability. So I do everything from building performance analysis, which would be your LCAs, daylight analysis, envelope analysis, Artino's energy modeling, to sustainability planning, LEED certification, all of those things. So I started using One Click LCA last year, and I was sold pretty quickly. It became pretty much necessary for one of the projects that I was on. And some of the other softwares we typically utilized for our LCAs didn't cut exactly what the contractor had requested. So we'll go into that a little bit. Thank you to OneClick for inviting me to be here and talk a little bit about my experiences. I am still a user that is very much so learning. So if you have any feedback for me, questions, comments, please feel free to reach out to me after. Suggestions, anything like that, my email is going to be on the last slide in this presentation. Okay, why One-Click LCA? That's what we're going to go through first. Like I mentioned, it became necessary for a project request that I got from a contractor, but I quickly realized that it's a really robust tool that I prefer over other softwares for a lot of reasons that we're going to talk about. The database is very robust. I really like that materials are tied to an EPD that you can click on and that you can open. So you're able to actually see what exactly the global warming potential is. You're able to go to the EPD, look at the inputs, look at where those numbers, those resources came from. So everything is very trackable, certifiable. So I really like the level of detail that is in that database. And they have a ton of different, a ton of different resources in their database. If there's a resource, a product that you're using on your project that is not in their database, then you can create a custom material. If you have the EPD, then you can input it that way. If you don't have the EPD, you can put in some different metrics to represent that product as closely as possible. You can easily navigate material assignments and change your material volume and area. I really like the interface that OneClick has because I can see, you can see this snip that I have right here. I can see all of the different products that I have assigned in my LCA, and I can quickly scroll through. I can quickly kind of compare volumes. If I'm comparing a baseline to a design case, I can easily, run my analysis for that design case using the Revit model that my architect structural engineer provided. And if I know that there was a reduction in volume of structural material, for example, I can run that design case and then I can come into OneClick, copy the LCA, and then change the volume of material easily to reflect that volume change between baseline and proposed. So that's how I would kind of come up with my baseline versus my proposed case. You can customize your transportation impact, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, why this became necessary for a project that I was working on. Because your transportation impact is not the same everywhere. There's tons of different modes of transportation, whether by air, by sea, by truck, and the impact is going to vary depending on what country you're in and what the conditions are like there. So you're able to import your custom transportation mode right in OneClick. OneClick also has a completeness and plausibility checker, which I like. The way that I will use it, you can see on the right, OneClick is giving me a grade of B. Grades A through, I don't know, F. So it will flag different material types that seem like they are not necessarily credible. For example, my glass mass is unusual. Line item number 5, that's something that they flagged. So if I see that, that's a flag for me to go back into my Revit model, make sure that all of my glass had the right assignments. You can see that there's flagging that the project value is lower than that 0.573 is lower than their threshold of what they would normally expect, which is a 1 through 13. So I'm wondering, okay, did I not assign all of my glass? Did it not all make it in the upload from Revit to OneClick? Or maybe this project doesn't have very many windows, and I can say, okay, nope, this is validated, and I can hit this little cursor to validate that. But maybe it's a flag that is something really important that I need to take a look at. So maybe I did forget to upload something. So for me, it's like a guide to steer me to the different elements that I just need to go back and double check. But it's still, it's on me to go back and double check my work. It's not going to be able to tell me exactly what's right or wrong. I'm the one that knows my project and that knows my building. So I find that really helpful to use. It also has the Carbon Heroes benchmark, which I find helpful because you might be wondering, okay, where does my project stack up against other projects of similar building type? So on this project, for example, I got a benchmark grade of C. So I guess kind of middle of the road, maybe a little bit better. Something that I was having an issue with on a couple of projects when I first started using OneClick was that my benchmark was G, but way way magnitudes higher than that 590. And so I realized that something was wrong with the units that I had set in OneClick. So that was a flag for me to go back and check that. So it's nice to be able to have this benchmark, the plausibility checker, because you want to make sure that your project is falling into the ranges that OneClick would expect for a typical project. And if it's not, then maybe that's normal. Maybe your project is atypical, but maybe it's just a flag that you should probably go back and double check something. I like the customizable graphics that they have. So you can see all these different tabs, all impact categories, life cycle stages, elements, etc. These are all tabs that you can click on to customize different graphics that will just automatically pop up here looking nice and ready to go. You can change the way they're stacked, the way you can look at global warming potential, you can look at different impact categories. So it's nice to just have all those different graphics. So it's not a one size fits all report that you're ending up with. You can customize it based on what you need for your project. I also like that you get a customizable Word report in the end. Here's a table of contents of what you get when you export that report at the end of your project. You will notice that OneClick is giving the author instructions on here. You need to make sure you update this. You need to make sure you update this for your project. There's just some information that you need to fill in manually that OneClick naturally doesn't have, but that will make your project more robust. And depending on what the needs of my project are, I can, feel like some sections aren't as important as applicable, I can remove them. I can add anything that I need. I can add in more graphs that I need. So it's not a one size fits all Word report or PDF report. It is very customizable, which I really like. Customer service is great. I will, honestly, when I was first starting out, I definitely got in touch with them every day for a while because I was kind of the first one at Page on our team to start really playing around with OneClick in depth. But now that I got the hang of it, I'm able to guide my team members, and it's a much faster process for all of our team members being able to learn from one another. But there were a lot of questions that that I needed to reach out to a OneClick rep about, and I was on getting a lot of pressure from our client to get this done as soon as possible. When isn't that the case, right? But I consistently would get my email response within 24 hours. The rep that I was working with was abroad, so I knew that I would send my email by the end of the day, and then in the morning when I came into work, I would pretty much always have an email response, which helped me every day to keep moving. I wasn't held up for a long period of time waiting for any sort of feedback from a rep. So I found that really, really helpful. And they're also very receptive to feedback that I gave on the software, things that kind of tripped me up, things that confused me, recommendations that I had. Have you thought about changing this or that? And they're very receptive. And it's an ongoing process of updating that system and updating that software. So if you have feedback, things you want to see, it's nice to know that you're working with reps that are very open to that sort of feedback. Okay, going into this case study, this is the reason that I jumped into using OneClick in the first place. I can't share too many details about the project because it's a secure project, but I can tell you that it's a 130,000 square foot, 4-story building, concrete structure. Facade is clad with terracotta, stone, metal panel. Get the picture, is on the African continent as well. which made it unique from a lot of the other projects that I'm working on. So the situation on this project is that the client really wanted to integrate fly ash into their concrete mix. Who wouldn't? The tricky part about that is that where the project was located in Africa, the nearest source of fly ash was going to be a 1,200-mile truck drive, which in the United States, you're very likely to be able to source fly ash from closer to that. So it's a little bit of a unique situation being an international project that it's, you got to kind of think, okay, I got to think a little bit more outside the box. Normally, fly ash is a no-brainer. Of course, we want to integrate it in our concrete mix if we can. But in this case, transportation just might be so significant that we wouldn't want to. So we got to kind of take a closer look at that. And so that was what the contractor wanted us to look at. For context, 1,200 miles is further than the drive from DC to Minneapolis, Minnesota. That helps me get some context. When I look at 1,200 miles, I have no idea. So it's pretty far. So thinking about transportation impact, other LCA tools are assuming US diesel fuel and efficient vehicles, but of course the impact of transportation is likely to be greater in a developing country. Traveling on smaller vehicles, roads are less developed, there's going to be more delays. We could assume that the vehicles that they're using are not, they might be 10, 15 years older in terms of efficiency. So had to figure out a way to take this into account. So when I learned that in OneClick you can do that, I was like, all right, let me figure that out. That sounds kind of like exactly what we need. So OneClick offers a robust database of options for your mode of transportation. You can see up here on the right, you can choose between cargo, ship, truck, train, and not just that. There's options that are more specific to different countries. They get really specific, whether it's long distance, medium distance, short distance, freight transport via air transport. You can see it gets really granular in the different options that are available. And then, as I mentioned, you can also create your own mode of transportation. And then you have the ability to assign 2 legs of transportation. So in my case, I was looking at fly ash and concrete, of course, but I was also looking at all the different products on the project because this project was far enough along that we had some submittals in and we actually knew where things were being sourced from. So I was able to account for the impact of shipping some materials from the United States. Flying, shipping, however, we were getting them to Africa, getting them from there on the truck. So I was able to account for both legs of transportation. So I was able to get really granular. And then what I ended up doing was I created a custom transportation impact using the OneClick online software. And I ended up plugging in a 0.31 kilogram carbon dioxide equivalent per ton kilometer for truck transportation. Why did I do that? I selected a 7.5 to 16 ton freight transport from the OneClick database. I'm assuming that the vehicle that this fly ash might be transported on might be similar in size to that. We tacked on a 10% increase for poor road quality, delays, things like that. And then we added in a 25% increase for low efficiency vehicles. Vehicles that are 10 to 15 years older than American vehicles are what we assumed we would be seeing for this trip in Africa. And the US Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy reports a 25% improvement in vehicle emissions between 2005 and 2020. So we said, okay, let's assume then there is the vehicles that would be making this trip are about 25% less efficient. So 25% increase to the impact for that original freight transport that I had selected. If anyone has done anything similar and has any other methods or recommendations in the future, I would love to hear it, would love to put our heads together. This is just something that we brainstormed, and we found that it was going to be the most accurate we could come up with for what we needed. Oops. Oops. Okay, and then here are the results. So we have 4 different concrete mixes. The one on the far left has 0 fly ash. The next one, 20% fly ash. The next one, 40%. And the next one, a 20% fly ash and 30% slag mix. So what we found is that if you were to make just a 20% fly ash substitution, the transportation impact that is associated with that substitution is going to outweigh the benefit of making that substitution. You really need 40% or more fly ash, slag, other cement substitution in order to actually see that benefit in embodied carbon. Of course, this is all an estimate. You know, it's really the best we could do with the data that was out there. If anyone has any other recommendations, love to hear it, but this is, you know, kind of the best that we could come up with. And as a result, they did not use fly ash on the project. But of course, you know, we recommended implementing and selecting some other sustainable materials where they could. And they ended up making an improvement in their embodied carbon from the baseline at the end of the day. But it was not via this fly ash. We found some other means that they could use to reduce their embodied carbon impact. Okay, from here, some tips and tricks. At Page, we use the Revit plugin for our material assignments. Our architects and structural engineers are primarily building in Revit. So we will wait until the project is at a certain stage in design where we've got assignments for those structural materials built out, and their, you know, facade enclosure materials are built out in Revit. If we want to take an earlier look at the projection for embodied carbon on our project, we have used One Click LCA's early analysis tool. But if we're doing a full robust LCA, we're going to wait until we have the Revit model built out just enough to have all the assignments that we need already in there. And then from there, upload to the cloud. So the best course of action, what we try to do, is to set up a meeting with our architecture team, our structural engineer, early in project design, talk about embodied carbon goals, talk about, you know, what are going to be their material choices, how can we reduce volume of structural materials on this project, what are some greener alternatives, lower embodied carbon alternatives that they can integrate into their project. We also talk about modeling logistics. Ideally, you know, during this initial conversation, we are talking about, you know, we're explaining to them exactly what we need as they're modeling to make it as seamless as possible for us to upload that data into OneClick and get it into the cloud. And I'm going to go through a few of the things that I've seen getting a model down the line that probably didn't have that level of coordination, because that meeting doesn't always happen. You know, we are on the building science team, we're kind of like an in-house consultant. So we are not the ones doing the designing and the modeling, but we're the ones that take the model when it's ready for that LCA, and we'll run that LCA. So sometimes I do get requests that maybe they haven't engaged the building science team early on, and we just get the request for the LCA, and okay, we have to work with what we get. Usually though, and prefer it when we can set up that early coordination meeting. Okay, so one issue that we had run into is it would have been ideal to, we needed to confirm that our structural elements are being modeled with depth, because on one of the projects we were on, it was not. The metal deck was assigned to the roof assembly as a drop down, like a checkbox, kind of like this. So if you see where I have highlighted in yellow, the deck profile form deck is just chosen from this drop down. And the thickness is not being accounted for here in this table up here. All that OneClick is pulling is what we have in this table. It's pulling the structure, structural deck, the finish. It did not pull the metal deck. If you're familiar with embodied carbon, metal deck structural steel is super high embodied carbon. So this is a really important thing to not miss. So we had to, basically to prevent missing this, we'll talk a little bit about my QA/QC process in the end, but I always go back to my structural elements and just look from a high level to get all the big stuff, but I'll talk about that in a second. Avoiding duplicate materials. So at Page, we usually have an architect that is working on a architectural model, and then we have a structural engineer that is working on a separate structural model in Revit. The architect might end up pulling some structural elements into their architectural model. And so then what happens is that we've got the architectural model with some structural elements and the structural model with all the structural elements. So there is overlap because now there's structural elements are counted in, the same ones are counted in both models. So when we upload to the cloud, then now we've got duplicates. So what I will do is I utilize the Isolate in 3D tool to walk around the architectural model, and I'll look at it side by side if I can with the structural model, and just from a high level, are there duplicates here? Do we have duplicate slabs? Do we have duplicate columns? Do we, what is duplicated? And just make sure that I'm not going to upload duplicate materials between my architectural and structural model, because at the end of the day, I'm going to want to put those together and have one whole building LCA that is structure and envelope together. So if I do notice a duplicate element and I want to leave a material assignment blank, there's not an easy way or a clear way to do this in OneClick right now, but OneClick Rep and I worked together a little workaround, because if you were to leave the element blank and then you upload it to the OneClick cloud, OneClick will automatically assign something to it, which generally is nice. Okay, they're automatically assigning materials for you, but I'm actively trying to keep it blank. I mean, I could probably just delete out that element, or what we had come up with is assigning a dummy material to all the assignments that we don't want to have an assignment. For example, dishwasher is what I did in this example. So I did not want to include my countertop base cabinet, counter, et cetera, in my LCA. So I assigned it to a dishwasher. Then when it went up into the cloud, you could very easily see which items are dishwasher and just remove them. Okay, something that I've put on my personal checklist, if you are creating custom materials, important to note that you create your custom material, assign it in Revit, upload it to the cloud, and then you're like, oh shoot, I got to change something in my custom material. You go back in your custom material, make that change. It does not automatically change it in all of the projects that you have just assigned it to. So what you need to do is go back to your project and manually reassign it to that new updated custom material. So just highly recommend, do your due diligence in making sure that that custom material is as accurate as it can be the first time you put it in. And if you need to change it later, then just make sure you're going back and you're replacing it everywhere that you've already assigned. Okay, overall, I know there's some things that I've had to work through and come up with workarounds and workshop with the LCA, with the OneClick LCA rep on. But overall, like I started out in the beginning, OneClick LCA is my choice in software for all of the reasons that I have gone over in this time. You can create custom materials. You've got your EPD data there that you can pull and tie to all of the materials in your database. You can customize your transportation impact, which was absolutely necessary on my project. So it depends on your project needs, but we needed that. So you've got resources provided for QA/QC, customizable report and graphics, and like I said, excellent customer service. I've really enjoyed all the time that I've spent chatting with and getting to know and learn from all of the OneClick reps. So they are really great. And thank you again to them for inviting me to chat with you all. That is all I've got. If you have any comments, suggestions, questions, need clarifications on anything that I went over, my email is and my phone number are on the slide. I am definitely very eager to learn more about embodied carbon accounting, LCAs. How can we design and build buildings with a lesser impact? How can we come up with more accurate reporting data for our projects? So I'm always looking to kind of bounce ideas off of each other. So if anyone has any suggestions for me or any comments or anything we can discuss, I would love to do so. So thank you guys again for your time, and have a good one.
Thank you so much, Sophie. So many tips and tricks for our audience and a lot of food for thought as to why doing an LCA is so important. And, we want to keep the conversation going with you guys in the live audience as well. So in a moment, you will see a poll come up on the screen asking if you would like to book a demo with OneClick LCA. If you click yes, someone from OneClick LCA in your region will reach out to schedule a one-on-one consultation where you can learn more about the OneClick LCA Revit integration, find out what particular use case it applies to on your project, and find out more about how you can use these tools. So if that sounds good to you, please answer yes on the poll now, and someone will be reaching out to you directly. And before we go, I do want to invite you to a very important event that is coming up on June 5th and 6th. This is the biggest digital event in sustainable construction, and we are really excited to be hosting 14 different sessions spanning all time zones. We have industry leaders all over the world who will be joining us. It's going to be a really exciting event. You can scan the QR code that is on the screen right now in order to go to the registration page. And if you see an event that is outside of your time zone that you want to attend, everything will be made on demand on the day of the event. So go ahead and register for all the sessions that interest you. You'll be able to access them on demand, and we can't wait to see you there. So with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much to our presenters today, to Becky and Kostas and Sophie, and thank you to our production team behind the scenes. And thank you to you, our live audience, for taking the time out of your day to spend time with us. And so with that, I'll let you go back to your day, and we will see you on the next webinar.